what's going to happen is like people are going to stop thinking about rollups, or at least users are going to stop thinking about rollups. Developers are going to think about rollups because they're going to care a lot about where they have the best developer experience. But it's going to be a developer-oriented thing. Users are not going to have to think about like Base versus Optimism versus Arbitrum. Like it's going to be abstracted away from the user experience. So what we're building here is an interop protocol for the Ethereum ecosystem. And then on top of that, you can leverage this. Like this is kind of from my prior experience building my first company. We didn't call it like intents and solvers back then, but to me, it is just very clearly the way the world is going. And what this gives you in the Ethereum ecosystem is this ability for users to use apps on different rollups and not think about the fact that like the application is deployed on Arbitrum, but your funds are on Optimism. This all happens effectively, instantaneously. And so users don't need to even be aware of the fact that there's different machines behind the scenes executing these things.
Welcome to the Edge Podcast. I'm DeFi Dad here with Nomadic from 4RC. Today's show dives into Omni Network, a project ambitiously aiming to unite all rollups under Ethereum. With Omni Network's mainnet launch here, we'll explore how it plans to unify Ethereum's fragmented L2 ecosystem, offering us one UX for DeFi across all L2s and Ethereum mainnet. But before we do, just a quick word from our sponsors who make the Edge Podcast possible. Introducing REDSTONE, the fastest growing oracle for DeFi. REDSTONE is the leading oracle for liquid staking and restaking assets, supporting over 60 chains with both the push and pull models. REDSTONE protects more than $3 billion of total value locked and is trusted by more than 100 clients, including the biggest protocols in DeFi, such as Pendle, Venus, EtherFi, and Athena. The unique modular design of REDSTONE makes their price feeds available cross-chain, including EVM, non-EVM, roll-up networks, and all types of app chains. REDSTONE aims to bring the industry forward by supporting upcoming Bitcoin staking tokens and continues to be the #1 oracle provider for liquid staking and restaking tokens. Soon the team will unveil the highly anticipated REDSTONE token to decentralize the protocol. Learn why Nomadic and I rely on REDSTONE for our favorite DeFi apps at redstone.finance and join the REDSTONE expedition today. Overwhelmed trying to manage your crypto and DeFi investments? Meet iYIELD, a free financial planning tool for crypto natives and yield farmers. iYIELD's dashboard compares returns from your DeFi positions side by side, providing clarity to help you make better decisions. iYIELD supports a growing list of over 16,000 tokens and 40 of the top DeFi and staking protocols across 17 blockchains, including Ethereum L2s. The best part is that iYIELD is 100% free, anonymous, and there are no ads. Check out iYIELD.com today to take control of your financial future. Say hello to Puffer UNIFI. Puffer Finance is expanding beyond native liquid restaking, with new products such as UNIFI-based rollup and UNIFI pre-confirmations AVS. UNIFI is not just another L2. UNIFI is a based rollup, one that will solve L2 issues, such as slow withdrawals versus instant withdrawals with Puffer UNIFI. Puffer UNIFI is fast, capable of sub-second transactions. UNIFI also has boosted Puffer points, which means if you bridge assets, you earn boosted Puffer points and rewards from dApps on UNIFI. Puffer's core products mean a bright future for Ethereum. Learn more at puffer.fi. All right, let's introduce the co-founder of Omni Network and CEO of Omni Labs, Austin King. Austin, welcome back to the Edge Podcast. How are you doing?
Doing well. Bitcoin's at 100K. Yeah, appreciate you guys having me back on.
Yeah, it's an exciting day. So we're pre-recording this for the launch of Omni Mainnet. So if you're listening or watching this, Mainnet's already live, but we're recording this then the day after Bitcoin hit $100,000 for the first time. So yeah, really exciting, huge milestone for us in crypto. I know it further legitimizes all the other sectors of crypto beyond just the store of value digital gold that Bitcoin is. So we're excited, Austin, to have you back. There's a campaign that you just launched, and it is to Ethereum. I'll bleep that out here later. Yeah. And so we're going to break down what exactly that means. Like, what is there to how does Omni it. Why don't we, though, just kick off with just some background on Omni? So maybe you can just refresh our listeners with, what have you been building with Omni Network, and why should we care as users?
Cool. So, as a quick overview on Omni Network as a whole, basically the goal here was always to build an interoperability protocol that was native to Ethereum. This kind of came from our experience being DeFi developers ourselves a few years ago. And we wanted to scale our protocol across these different rollups. At the time that we built our protocol, I think it was just Arbitrum and Optimism just getting going. But now, I don't even know. There's like hundreds at this point, I think, that are out there. Obviously, activity is concentrated among a smaller set of them. But, this came from our own experience of it is clear that the rollup-centric roadmap just isn't really sufficiently touching on how these rollups are going to communicate with one another and kind of what the connectivity layer is across all of them. So that's always been our goal with Omni, to create the connectivity layer for the Ethereum L2 ecosystem. And so at a technical level, it's an interoperability protocol purpose-built for the Ethereum ecosystem. And it also has its own EVM, so that you can do computation across all these different environments at the same time.
Awesome. We'll dive further into the campaign that you guys are kicking off, but I saw a tweet that you did the other day, and by the way, I think you're in founder mode right now, because you got a lot of banger tweets right now. But this one specifically, I didn't know this. I didn't know that you worked at Ripple previously, but in that tweet, it sounds like you kind of did a lot of this at that old position at Ripple. So maybe explain that tweet a little bit, and just kind of what you did at Ripple, and how it kind of set you up for doing this at Omni for Ethereum.
Yeah, so originally my first company, we actually built a network called the Interledger Network. This was a protocol that came out of Ripple, but it was intentionally a cross-currency chain agnostic protocol. The whole idea, really, the reason I was convinced to work on this protocol at the time was because I believed there were going to be many chains. Kind of in my brain, I was there's at least going to be Ethereum and Bitcoin. So we are going to need some connectivity layer across these two chains. Obviously, since then, we've seen a proliferation of a bunch of these different chains. But I built that company for 2 years. We scaled out this network. Ripple bought my company, and I worked there for a year. And then I quit to start this company, which eventually became Omni. But yeah, honestly, I was really fortunate to early in my career have the experience of being able to get a company going. And I made a lot of mistakes at that company for sure. I was very fortunate in the sense that it got bought. But, it was kind of like a training lap early on in my career. And especially I had a lot of mentorship on the protocol design front. And so a lot of the mechanisms that we actually used to create this cross-chain payment network in 2018 are applying now for Ethereum in 2024. And it is cool seeing parallels of just design principles that can be applied to solve these same problems that are cropping up down the line. But that's really my background of how I got involved in the Ripple ecosystem at large.
Austin, we talked a little bit about this in the last podcast. Maybe we should talk more about the legacy issue with fragmentation in Ethereum. What do we mean by that when we say fragmentation? And I guess how would an Omni solve for this?
Yeah, honestly, I think a lot of this comes from people think that Ethereum is facing a bunch of headwinds right now, but this was always the plan. We were always going to scale with rollups. We've been on this path, I think, since late 2020. Is more kind of when the Ethereum Foundation was all right, this is the future of the Ethereum network. And so we're actually succeeding, but we're just going through some growing pains on the way. Obviously, today it's really difficult to work across all these different rollups if you're a user. It's also really difficult to build for all of Ethereum's users if you're a developer right now. And so I think we're just kind of in this weird intermediate stage where we don't have the actual connectivity infrastructure for the Ethereum ecosystem. And that's really degrading the user experience. But at large, I really think this is just an awkward maturation stage in Ethereum's journey. And we need to get users operating at a higher level of abstraction. But there's a very clear technical roadmap in my head to making that happen. This is now very front and center. Vitalik is posting pretty consistently about what should the user experience look like when you're operating across all these different rollups look like. And really, it should just look like you're using Ethereum. And we're totally aligned on that. So yeah, I think this is really just things are weirdly going according to plan right now, but just an uncomfortable stage that we're in as an ecosystem.
So I feel you're countering the idea that the vision for Ethereum is not clear. Like there's been this talking point on crypto Twitter that there's no North Star, and it gets parroted over and over again because crypto Twitter is such an echo bubble of bullshit at times. So, yeah, maybe you can just expand on this. Like, is the vision clear? I guess as a builder who's working to help scale Ethereum, like, do you see this as less of an issue on like the technical side and more of like a marketing issue, or maybe it's like a hybrid of the two?
Honestly, I think a lot of narrative is driven by price action, and I think most people are overthinking this right now. And it's just because, like, why is ETH not mooning? Like, it must have some problem. And it's like, yeah, you can point to problems that are happening right now. There are many problems in the Ethereum ecosystem. But like one reason that I love the Ethereum ecosystem is because we have probably the most like values aligned, well-intentioned builders across the entire crypto industry. So like many people are trying to solve these challenges today, and I'm super hopeful for where things will go. So to me, like, what is Ethereum's North Star? The reason that I fell in love with Ethereum in 2017 was just like, wow, this is going to be like a neutral economic foundation for the world. People are going to be able to work with each other from across the world. They're not going to have to ask for permission from some bank or some government to do that. We're just going to be able to like work together. It's just neutral economic foundation for everybody. And to me, that's still like what we're building towards right now. Sure, it like looks different right now, but to me, that's always been what has had me really excited. Where we don't need to depend on these centralized intermediaries to help us engage in commerce and help us coordinate action together. We just have this neutral infrastructure. So to me, that's what Ethereum has always been about, and that's still like how I think about it today.
Okay, Austin, getting to this new campaign that we sort of alluded to earlier, it's called Ethereum. Would love to just kind of get your take on just the genesis or the idea behind this campaign.
Yeah, it's funny. So our team is our growth team is very small. We're primarily engineers, and there's just like 2 BD people and 1 marketing person on our team. And they were brainstorming. Originally, it was build together. And we were like, in a call, we're like, this kind of lame. Like nobody's going to look at that. And then somebody was like, what if we said Ethereum? And initially, I was like, dude, that's spicy. Like, that makes me a little uncomfortable. And then they were like, but that's kind of good, right? And I was like, I mean, yeah, sure, that will get attention. And like it, even though it's vulgar, it's not negative. It is like hopeful for the future of Ethereum. And so I don't know, one thing that I think, especially because of just how small our growth team is, we just tend to lean into like spicier takes and like take risks like that. And so yeah, we decided to roll with Ethereum. And yeah, honestly, really proud of the team for putting it together. Especially the content that they put together. Like Chase on my team has put together some killer videos on it. And so yeah, really excited with how it's going.
So the Ethereum is referring to this like this mainnet launch then. And so like, I guess if someone were to ask me, how then does Omni Ethereum, like, how do we answer that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what the world is going to look like, basically throughout 2025, I think all of this, like, Ethereum's a shit show, like it's fragmented, everybody's fighting. I think that's going to go away. And from a technical angle, what's going to happen is like people are going to stop thinking about rollups, or at least users are going to stop thinking about rollups. Developers are going to think about rollups because they're going to care a lot about where they have the best developer experience. But it's going to be a developer-oriented thing. Users are not going to have to think about like Base versus Optimism versus Arbitrum. Like, it's going to be abstracted away from the user experience. So what we're building here is an interop protocol for the Ethereum ecosystem. And then on top of that, you can leverage this. Like, this is kind of from my prior experience building my first company. We didn't call it like intents and solvers back then, but to me, it is just very clearly the way the world is going. And what this gives you in the Ethereum ecosystem is this ability for users to use apps on different rollups and not think about the fact that like the application is deployed on Arbitrum, but your funds are on Optimism. This all happens effectively, instantaneously. And so users don't need to even be aware of the fact that there's different machines behind the scenes executing these things. And if you think about it, it's just like, honestly, I think we're massively over-indexing on the current state of Ethereum because the entire internet runs this way. Like, you don't think about like whether you're using a server on AWS to go to one website or a server on GCP to go to another website, it just like works. You just like type in the website and it's abstracted from you. It's going to be the same thing with the Ethereum ecosystem. Right now, we just like don't have that abstraction layer, that like DNS equivalent that made it really simple for people to not think about individual computers when we were building out the internet.
I think we should get into maybe a few user examples of like how this would work. But first, I want to quickly ask you, has there been any like negative pushback from the campaign? Like usually when, you know, it is a little spicy, like you said, like, and I know there's very passionate Ethereum maxis that are like, you know, there's nothing to how could you ever, you know, assume so? But yeah, just like what's been the perception, I guess, or reception, I should say.
Yeah, honestly, one thing that I think we're good at as a team is just like rolling with the punches. Like we knew people, like some people, we were intentional about ruffling feathers with this. That's how we thought about it. And so, yeah, I think the biggest like pushback I saw was from Evan Van Ness, which, to be clear, I have a ton of respect for. I've had a ton of respect for him for a very long time, and I still do. But yeah, he quote tweeted basically being like, this guy, there's no to do. And honestly, like, I get it. Like it's a spicy campaign, but we intentionally did that. But like, fundamentally, what we are doing here is like, we are building something like to really like advance the Ethereum ecosystem forward. Anybody who like tries to pretend that there is not a problem today is clearly like not, they're just being dishonest. We have Solana as a clear differentiator. Like, this is what the future of Ethereum could look like. Near instant transaction confirmations, crazy throughput. Users just have a nice, simple experience. They just use the applications. We don't have that on Ethereum today. That is just clear to everybody. And so I end up like, honestly, we were intentional about this. Like, we knew that there would be some pushback, but that was just part of the marketing strategy. And anybody who has talked shit about us, like, honestly, basically anybody I've seen, I actually have a ton of respect for these people because they're all like Ethereum like people, and I've been in the Ethereum ecosystem for like so many years now. So yeah, that's kind of how we think about it.
I would point out to anyone, if you're in the space long enough, you need what gets called a maximalist for every single chain. Like, really, it's another way to say like these are extremely loyal people who clearly would have some sort of bag at stake. That's how we align folks. Like, that's the power of like a token to align a community. And I mean, if you are just, you know, having fleeting thoughts and moving from chain to chain, like there's no community that can ever grow within these chains. So I think where a maximalist, quote unquote, like thinking becomes a problem is what you pointed out, Austin. It's where you start to talk yourself out of like what's objectively visible in front of you when there's problems that like need solving. And so, yeah, anyways, we're excited for like this new approach that you guys are bringing. And what's great is it's not like there's like a one size fits all to scaling Ethereum or to creating just a better UX for users. End of day, you know, toss aside all of the language, the thinking around scaling. We as users want a better experience. And I'll put a cap on it with this. As someone who really does think a lot about like how decentralized is this chain, how like censorship resistant is it? Because we've seen chains actually fail. We've seen what happens when like something masquerades as DeFi. I've personally seen with something like Base, just like how much I do value having a better experience, knowing that it's not like as decentralized or censorship resistant as using Ethereum L1, but Jesus, it's done such a great job of onboarding new folks to the space. I just yesterday helped a buddy of mine get on board with a wallet with Base, and you know, the delight for him of being able to transact for like, let's say less than a penny, to have the transaction settle instantly. When he sent it from Coinbase to his wallet, like he's used Ethereum mainnet with me before, and he was like, whoa, like it's already there. He spent $200 on a failed transaction back in 2020, 2021. And this is someone, you know, who like that loss was huge at the time. Like that was painful to him to have lost $200 on a whim. So whatever we can do to improve the user experience is so powerful, and it gets more people in the door. And then they're able to potentially become a loyalist to whatever chain they're on. And in this case, I think you as Omni Network are going to create a lot more loyalists, maximalists of Ethereum and all the different L2s.
Yeah, I mean, look at all of the people that have been onboarded the past 6 months. Like, you know, Base has done good work, but like, if we're being real, like Solana is the real like machine that's getting all the users right now. And so like, let's fix that problem for the Ethereum ecosystem so that like we can bring people into this chain that is maximally decentralized and has these properties that like censorship resistance that we really care about. I'm also happy to like, I'm saying like, oh, abstract this stuff. Like it will be, users won't have to think about this. I can give like a pretty technical overview of like how we'll actually achieve that. We can avoid that if it's boring. But like, I feel like it is pretty like easy to walk through.
That would be great, Austin. Yeah. Why don't we, let's do that here next. Yeah. Go right ahead.
Cool. So, important context here. This is not how I thought it was going to work like 6 months ago. So like I said, for a little bit of history, when we first started this company, we built a DeFi protocol called Rift. Honestly, it went really well. We got 50 mil TVL in like 2 days after we launched it. And we're like, sick, let's scale this across these different rollups. We started thinking about how to do that for ourselves. But then anybody who was doing well on Ethereum L1 at that time was thinking about the same problem. Like, how do we make sure our protocol doesn't get sidelined as like Arbitrum and Optimism and all these new ones that inevitably will come pick up steam? And so that's really kind of where the origins of Omni came from. So we've always looked at it from a very like developer-centric point of view because we were building it for ourselves. Eventually it hit a point where like, this is going to be a fundamental problem for the entire Ethereum developer ecosystem. So let's solve this in a generalized way for everybody instead of just like building it for ourselves. So that's some context on like where our design perspective comes from. But cool, let's just walk through a simple flow of how this, in my opinion, is all going to work in the future. So what's going to happen, I'll walk through this example of like Symbiotic. Symbiotic is a restaking protocol. We're building with them right now. They're going to be the first to like actually roll this out into production. So Symbiotic is a protocol that exists on Ethereum L1. They want to keep their smart contracts on Ethereum L1 because that's where it has the best security properties. And they don't want to like deploy across all these different rollups and like manage a cross-chain application and stuff. Like I actually tried to sell that as a product for like a year. And we got a bunch of teams building it on Omni, but like it literally would take like 4 months to push that to production for these different teams. We found a way to do it in like 4 days. And so how does that work? Basically, you're going to have generalized escrow contracts on every single rollup. These contracts are just going to accept like money and a user intent. So if I'm trying to drop an ETH into Symbiotic and I'm on Optimism, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a transaction on Optimism. I'm going to go to the website, Symbiotic, click like deposit 1 ETH. It's going to look like I'm putting it directly into Symbiotic. What it's actually going to do is drop it into an escrow contract, and immediately a solver is going to index that and then front 1 ETH on Ethereum L1 on behalf of the user. And so then the front end's going to index that and be like, okay, this user from the perspective of Ethereum L1 has deposited 1 ETH into this protocol. So you're all good to go. This all happens within seconds, and users don't need to think about like any of this complexity. Downstream of that, a cross-chain message is going to be sent to Optimism that says, hey, this solver fronted 1 ETH. Here's proof of it. Go unlock the 1 ETH that they put into this box on Optimism. In my view, this is how it's all going to go. It's insanely capital efficient because it only takes 15 minutes to unlock these like credit extensions that solvers are providing. And so that's like the general like design paradigm that actually I was building in like 2018 to 2020 with the Interledger network. But now it applies like extremely clearly to the Ethereum ecosystem as well. And that's my perspective on how this is all going to work moving forward. The reason that is because super easy for users, super easy for developers. They don't need to change their contracts. They literally just implement a front-end SDK.
Amazing. What about on the solver part of the equation? How are you incentivizing them? And how do you incentivize them enough to not like eat into the value transfer? Like you mentioned that 1 ETH, like what's the premium, I guess, to get the solver to do work?
The really cool thing here is it's so quick that you can think of it like, okay, in Aave, you get what, 5% on ETH if you like put it in there for a year. So that's effectively the benchmark for the cost of lending ETH. And if you squint at this, what solvers are doing is they're lending ETH for 15 minutes. And so what you're really charging is like, if that's the base rate where you can go get 5% on your ETH in a protocol like Aave, if you're lending something for 15 minutes, the fee can be so marginal compared to like the other base rate that's out there because it's such a capital efficient system. So the fees are going to be extremely marginal because it's effectively loans, but it's like a 15-minute loan.
Okay, so wow, that's clicking for me. So a solver that is like assisting me under the hood. So I'm DeFi Dad, the lender on Aave, and I'm using Omni to do this. When I like go to transact and lend some ETH there, a solver is stepping in and it's lending it for, you said, what is it, approximately like 15 minutes or so? Maybe remind us, where does that time like come from? What does that relate to? And then are they getting back their ETH and then my actual ETH is in the system there, but I've benefited from this like more unified, cohesive UX that's provided to me through Omni?
Yeah. So the time delay comes from ETH L1 finality. So ETH L1 takes roughly 15 minutes to be like, this is reality. This is never going to change. And at that point, you can, with complete confidence of Ethereum L1 security, send a cross-chain message. Be like, yo, this is what is in the symbiotic contract. This solver fronted 1 ETH on behalf of DeFi Dad. And then at that point, the ETH that you originally, what to you looked like you were putting in symbiotic, will be unlocked for that solver as a way to like repay them that loan that they extended for you.
So then is there a limitation then, I guess, on like how much liquidity is in this like solver network? Like, for example, if there was a user that was wanting to put up $500 million of Ether, I'm using an extreme example here, $1 billion. I mean, you need time to scale this, right? Like that could be a limitation for all this liquidity coming in at once, and basically the solver's not having enough liquidity to match that for the 15 minutes until it actually settles on Ethereum.
Yep. Yeah. So it's like this design paradigm might almost be like too good to be true, right? So like, where does it kind of like, where are the rough parts of this? It's really two dimensions. One, there's liveness. Like, what if there are 0 solvers in the network? Then like, you just can't do this. The nice thing is that you can use economic incentives to like get solvers to begin providing this service, because it's so cheap for them to like extend a 15-minute loan. Like, the economic fee that you have to offer is very, very marginal compared to the gas that you're already paying. So that's one, liveness. Two, it's like, what if you have a $500 million of ETH? What you can do at that point, that's like obviously like, okay, like an absurd example of like, where does this break down? What you can do is you could like break that down into like, okay, if we're moving $500 million of ETH from Optimism to ETH L1, there are auction designs where it's like, okay, we can sell this off 1 mil ETH at a time. So 500 solvers can come in and collectively coordinate this together. There's a project called Kalani. I don't know if you guys are familiar with, but they're smart. I talked with Kevin, the guy who is building this. He has a very unique perspective on the space. Honestly, it's very unlike how almost all the other developers that I talk with think about things. But he thinks a lot about solver collaboration, and it's a pretty fascinating design paradigm. But yeah, there's kind of like different auction designs you can use to kind of piece apart those gigantic orders.
Austin, is this like solver network going to be live at mainnet as well? Or is this like coming on later? Or yeah, what's like the rollout? So mainnet happens, or mainnet has happened. When is this kind of solver network going to be live as well?
Cool. So day one with Ethereum or with Omni Mainnet, what we're rolling out is this application, super simple, just like load test the network, put it out there, where you can go inscribe on Omni. You can do this across all these different rollups and Ethereum L1. So this is the base chain, like the EVM and the interop protocol that's live, when this will drop. After that, like the main thing that we're actually developing right now, this obviously was recorded in advance of the release, but we just got this on testnet of the first deposit from Arbitrum into Symbiotic on Ethereum L1. So this order flow engine, which like is this whole solver paradigm, that is what we're building now. And really that's our primary focus for Q1.
One of the challenges you're solving for has to do with, of course, like moving between like different L2s or the L1. One team that we've interviewed, Everclear, so it's DeFi's first clearing layer, would you guys then be working together? Like, do you benefit from what Everclear has built in terms of this like netting layer for DeFi?
Yeah. So it's not even that we benefit, it's that users benefit from both of these protocols existing. So what we are doing, honestly, is there are other teams working on solver stuff. I don't know any other protocol that is as pragmatic in the product design of like inserting this into the user experience, because users never need to even know that Omni exists. They don't need to install a new wallet or something like that. They don't need to go to a new application. They literally can just go to an existing application and just suddenly it's available across all these different platforms. And this 15-minute loan extension that I was talking about, that can be made even cheaper through solvers netting in a layer like Everclear. So yeah, these are synergistic for sure. I like that team a lot.
Is there ever any worry that like the Ethereum Foundation might enshrine like an idea that somebody that is building infra is kind of already building? Like, is that ever like a background worry of yours? Or maybe it's even the opposite. Maybe it's like, could they ever just enshrine something that somebody is already building? Like, could Omni ever be enshrined into Ethereum, if that even makes sense?
Yeah, so the way that I think about this is very similar. I think rollups were the first time that people started to really consider this, like optimism and Arbitrum. I think people were like, what if those kind of get like eaten up by the Ethereum Foundation or like ETH L1 itself? And right now, I think where we're at is it's early enough, even in the rollup world, for these to not be enshrined as protocols yet. And so I think rationally what is happening is the Ethereum Foundation is really letting the free market experiment and people build their own things. Long term, at a literal logistical level, I don't know if that would like how that would work necessarily. But I think the most important thing, and I think Optimism does a really good job emphasizing the Ethereum focus. I think Arbitrum does this really well also. And so it's almost kind of like a community cultural, I'm thinking of like a white blood cell. Like people can tell when something is not like genuinely Ethereum aligned and kind of like kick it out of there. And people, I think that's kind of this like weird organic like cultural system we have right now where it's like the people who care about Ethereum just like aren't using these protocols that they can't like aren't genuinely Ethereum aligned. And so that's kind of where I think we're at in the like short to medium term here. Long term, yeah, I'm not sure how like rollup enshrinement might work. Like there's talk about like based rollups, like at this point like native rollups and stuff. So it's an interesting thing to explore. But I think we're in this like highly exploratory like free market stage of Ethereum's evolution right now.
Before we get back to the show, we wanted to share a quick update from our sponsor at Mantle. Metamorphosis Season 2 is live, so now's your chance to restake your METH for CMETH and unlock new rewards on both Mantle and Ethereum networks. With CMETH, you can earn yields from staking and restaking protocols, plus powder for Cook rewards, all while staying flexible across your favorite DeFi integrations. You can start your restaking journey today at meth.mantle.xyz/restake. And special thanks to the Mantle community for supporting us here at the Edge Podcast and the Edge newsletter. We've all heard of Unichain being launched, and Uniswap is a key source for so much liquidity, in DeFi. I guess like could they be a solver then in this network, or like I guess ultimately would they be able to like benefit from this solver network and be able to like route more liquidity for users?
Yeah. So reading between the lines of the Unichain announcement, one thing that I think didn't get as much attention as like it was worth was their work on ERC 7683, which like what the hell are these random numbers? Like basically it's a standardized interface for intents. And so this is something that Uniswap is leading into pretty clearly at this point, to the point that they are going to have their own rollup. And so I don't think the future really is one of like proprietary solver networks. I don't think that makes structurally market sense, because there's just going to be solvers out there who are down to fill orders anywhere they see them. So I think anybody trying to capture their own like proprietary solver network is just like not a rational strategy. And also two, it's not very like win-win. I think the best thing to do is all of these different platforms that are relying on the solver paradigm, we all help bootstrap a more mature solver marketplace. And so Uniswap is clearly leaning into this more aggressively. They've almost, over time, evolved from their very simple AMM design. We kind of saw with B3, it's like, all right, we're going to have like concentrated liquidity. Like it's going to be a bit more sophisticated now. And if you read between the lines of the Unichain announcement, it's clear that they see an extremely low cost, high throughput Ethereum. And the future of this really is going to look very much like limit orders. AMM's got us a long way, and I'm not saying they're going to disappear entirely. There's definitely a certain like range of kind of like the asset classes that these chains are supporting that AMMs will perpetually make sense for. However, we have always known that limit orders they're way more economically efficient. And if you squint, solvers in many ways, one function of like the role that they're fulfilling is matching limit orders. And so this is one thing that I think most people are not like understanding as clearly, but Unichain is taking a very clear stance here that like the future is chain abstracted and solvers are going to be like a huge part of the economic engine of Ethereum.
So cool. It makes a lot of sense. Another innovation though that makes me often think of Omni and what you guys are building is referred to as a based rollup. Can you just walk us through, like, I guess, what are some of the differences here? And like, are these two different technologies that could coexist or I guess, like, will there have to be a winner between the two of them? Like, what are your thoughts there?
Yeah. And this makes me think of your question of like Ethereum's North Star. I think most people, really the fork in the road here is what does Ethereum's rollup future look like? Are they based or are they not based? That to me is really the difference here and like the main dictator of like the North Star. And so obviously we're in a world where the rollups today are not based. And for people who don't know what based means, basically it means relying on Ethereum L1 validators themselves to serve as like these sequencers that we have today. So there's obvious problems with sequencers that we have today. They're very centralized. They don't have censorship resistance and stuff. But if it's based, you can just rely on the Ethereum L1 validators themselves. This is a much earlier, or much more nascent design paradigm, but it is very, very interesting to kind of think of like, what if Ethereum L1 did become kind of like a shared sequencing layer to a certain degree? And I think there is like a viable roadmap here, possibly. It's very early. There are many cool projects working on this, and it's definitely like an active area of research that I keep tabs on. But yeah, in that world, more activity would be concentrated on the Ethereum L1 validators than is today. I think there are questions around maintaining decentralization if we put more responsibilities on those L1 validators. That to me is the main technical trade-off. And if we don't do that, what likely will happen is we'll push it to some outer protocol actor, like what has happened in the builder pipeline today. Like a lot of the Ethereum ecosystem, for some reason, to me, just like doesn't talk about this as much, but 90% of Ethereum L1 blocks come from two companies. That is an objective fact. And to me, it's like very obvious that this goes against the censorship resistance that like is a property that we decentralize so aggressively to achieve. And so if it becomes more based over time from a rollup perspective, I think it's possible that if we're not careful with how we design it, there'll be more of these like out of protocol builder type things where it's like, cool, sure, technically it's all the Ethereum L1 validators, but like, is that single company like doing everything over there? So that I think is the main thing as a community that we need to just watch, because there were many learning lessons as we discovered MEV and kind of built tooling around that. And I think we can learn from those experiences.
Austin, I think earlier you mentioned that all of these kind of new user features that you're rolling out with Omni are going to start to be noticed and realized by the users in like 2025. It sounds like that's the big year, hopefully, for this. But I guess when will this happen for users? Like, when will we see the difference start to form here?
Yeah. So with the rollout of Mainnet, we have the core interoperability protocol and the EVM. This whole exciting idea of abstracting away rollups, though, really is built like it's a design built on top of an interoperability protocol. That's really the like foundation that you need in order to achieve this. And so when is this going to be shipped? right now we're working closely with Symbiotic as our first build partner. We have a couple other protocols that we're working closely with. What'll happen is in like Q1 here, we're going to have like the initial tighter relationships. We're going to like iterate pretty quickly with these teams. Before this will be like Q2, Q3, we move to a more like generalized protocol. At this point, I've built like 6 or 7 protocols throughout my career. And honestly, I've made a ton of mistakes. But one of the like things that I've taken away from these experiences is that if you try to build a generalized thing too early and without clear customers in mind, you end up just building some weird shit that like doesn't really solve customers' problems as well as they could. And so we're being extremely iterative with this whole like order flow engine, like solver intent design initially. And then we're going to move to a generalized form. And so from a timeline perspective, Q1, Q2 is when you're going to see the initial like in prod. Wow, these things like bridging has been moved behind the scenes for a number of these applications. Q3, Q4 is when you're going to see the like generalized availability of these. And we're going to have like way more applications using this design paradigm. So I think closer to the end of the year, applications are going to be at a serious disadvantage if they make users think about bridging over to a specific rollup in order to access them. Because there's going to be some competitive pressure where like any team they're competing with, if users can just go use the app and don't need to go to another website and like bridge their funds over, wait a few minutes and stuff, there's going to be like healthy pressures there that like help unify the Ethereum ecosystem again.
Austin, there's already a token live, the Omni token. How does the Omni token play into Omni Network?
Yeah, so the Omni token, functionally speaking, really is there to power the engine that is this interoperability protocol across this ecosystem. As we introduce this order flow engine that's like based on this intent and solver paradigm, it'll play a bigger role within that as well. But fundamentally, it is like the machine it is the gas powering the machine that abstracts away this multi-rollup reality.
Austin, I know that there are criticisms of Omni Network. To be totally honest, I'm not aware of like what exactly those are. So just like, yeah, what are some of the main criticisms you get? And I guess like, how do you counter that? Like, how do you answer to the haters?
Yeah, I think in crypto, I think we have this organic, I mentioned something about white blood cells earlier, but it's kind of that we have an immune system in crypto where there's so much like grift and just like dumb stuff that is pushed out in this ecosystem. So I think there's a lot of like default cynicism and criticism in this industry, which honestly kind of like needs to fend off a lot of like bad actors. And so by default, if you're a founder, people are going to talk shit. Like if you are a founder doing anything in this space, and like even if you are the most pure, wholesome, like some anonymous account is going to talk shit to you. That just like is what it is. So you just got to have like thick skin. I think like by far the most obvious criticism that we get is just like the delay to shipping mainnet. And honestly, as CEO, even though I don't like code anymore, this is primarily my fault. And the reason that is the chain was effectively ready to go in like May, June this year. And what we saw was, I mentioned this whole time we've been talking about this intent solver paradigm. Originally, how we were trying to get people to build across the Ethereum ecosystem was this like cross-chain dApp idea, right? So it's kind of like what Layer 0 and Wormhole have been pushing for a few years. Like, you know, you deploy smart contracts across all these different places and it's like a multi-chain dApp. So that's originally what we were trying to sell. We were just trying to build it purpose-built for the Ethereum ecosystem. And it got to a point where we're like, all right, well, so Ethereum L1 finality takes 15 minutes. Does that mean like users are going to have to wait 15 minutes before like, and we just got like more developer feedback. And I had a conversation with my co-founder and CTO, Tyler. It was just like, dude, we can ship mainnet right now, but I can tell you like, nobody is going to use it because like nobody's going to integrate something that takes 15 minutes to like a user confirmation. And so what we did, by default, there's the Omni protocol has 2 confirmation strategies. One is finalized on Ethereum L1. And what we've been building over the past 5 months is what we call like fastest, which is basically right once a rollup issues a confirmation that it's going to include the transaction, it can relay that across the network. That is like very complex and difficult to implement from an engineering perspective, but that was the main cause of the delay. So the like core like finalized protocol has been ready since like May of this year. But honestly, like this came from a learning process of just, I don't think people or companies in the space like pivot as much as they should. And we just tried to be really real with ourselves. Like, okay, we've got a bunch of teams building it with us on testnet, but like, are these people going to get over the line if it takes 15 minutes? Like, probably not. And so, instead of shipping something that is just like, well, it's there and it's just like ghost world, we'd rather build something as close to valuable as possible and like really try to iterate towards that. I think people in this space have this weird aversion to pivoting because it like, I don't know, it's very unique to crypto compared to the normal startup world. But we pivoted like 4 times since we started this company. And I think people should pivot more because as long as you're not just like going all over the place, as long as you're narrowing in on something, it is rational to do that. And literally every startup should be doing this, but we just like don't do it in crypto as much. So that's the main criticism. And the main response is it's there. The foundation of the network is there. It's public. It's available to anybody today. And I'm super excited about it.
Well, I think what you've settled on definitely makes the most sense based on like the pivots that we've been able to see you guys play out, in real time. You mentioned this earlier. I think this was before we started recording the podcast, but I love the analogy of you're enabling this network that would allow someone like what a Citadel does with Robinhood, but it's more of an open auction process. So like we're getting the same sort of benefit. Like when you trade on Robinhood, you're not like asking like, well, how is this trade settled and where is the liquidity sourced from and what rate and slippage am I getting on this? You're just getting the best trade, the best quote available. And in this case, or like similar to almost like what a DEX aggregator does, like CowSwap. We all love CowSwap. CowSwap has this solver network. I think Matcha has something to that effect as well. They have some sort of like RFQ process. They're not just sourcing liquidity from the DEXs or AMMs. They're actually working with professional market makers as well. So, you've got a mechanism that works that will be automated with, this incentive design on chain. And at the end of the day, like we will benefit from a better UX. It's just that what you're abstracting away for us as DeFi users is all the bullshit that we're used to doing, navigating across different L2s and, Ethereum mainnet. And like, I just want to use all of this in one window. I want it to be easier. And I feel like that's what this solver network is ultimately enabling.
Yeah, totally agree. I think complexity will be pushed to sophisticated actors like it has been in the TradFi world. Key differentiator is that users will not be forced to audit kind of like the who fulfilled this and stuff, but they will have the capacity to do that. And there will be open permissionless auctions where these sophisticated actors have to fight to compete to get the order from end users. And this healthy competition will just drive the best outcome for users. And that's something uniquely that you can offer in an on-chain world that you really can't provide that proof to people in a centralized world like you have with Robinhood and Citadel today.
Austin, this is a good place, I think, for us to start to like wrap up. So for our listeners, I want to remind them that they should learn more about Omni by going to omni.network. Follow Omni FDN for the official Omni Network account on Twitter X. And then follow Austin's account. It's 0xASK, which stands for his name, Austin King. Austin, thanks so much for coming back on the podcast. We're excited that Mainnet's live. So if you're listening to this, you should go to omni.network to check that out. But like, what else would you recommend for us as users to get started? Like, I guess, like, are there applications that we could potentially start to use, or like, how can we like start to participate as early adopters?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this will be available on our website and on our Twitter. Go to that. Help us beat up the network. We put a ton of effort on the like security side of things. Honestly, like a lot of money too. We paid a lot of money to auditing firms. We did an open research competition and put a ton of work into like actually stress testing this before we rolled it out to prod. But there's an application, super simple, just like click button, send a transaction through the network. You can do this across any of these different rollups or Ethereum L1. Help us stress test the network now that it's out there. That's kind of like day one from the user perspective, what you can go do. If you're a developer, you can go read our docs and reach out to us. I have my DMs open on Twitter. We have a backlog of teams that we're working with on this like intent solver paradigm. But like this, I think feels extremely clear through the rest of 2025. This is going to become like the standard development pattern for the Ethereum ecosystem. So if you're excited about the idea of accessing users from across all the different rollups without having to like deploy across all of them, and two, just excited about the idea of a unified Ethereum, hit me up on Twitter. DMs are open.
Thanks everyone for tuning in. If you're a talented founder or developer, please consider reaching out to our team at fourthrevolution.capital. And to stay up to date with future episodes, plus get expert tips, strategies, and exclusive content, subscribe to our free newsletter at the-edge.xyz.